What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another FPL video. We're doing another FPL Showcase. I am joined by Mark, aka someone I'm sure you've heard of at the FPL General. I almost forgot your name then. I apologise. How are you doing?
I'm good, Andy. Good to be here. I still remember back to the very early days when you first started. I remember I was back in Ireland at the time, must have been during a pre-season, and this guy on Twitter said he was going to do a live stream on YouTube and he wanted a few people to jump in. So I remember being there that first night. I remember you looking at the screens thinking, am I live? Am I live?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yes, you were live. And as they say, the rest is history. So it's nice to come on and join you now after seeing such an amazing rise in your YouTube channel over the years.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. That stream. See, some YouTubers, they will delete, or not necessarily delete, but they'll make their old videos private. I like to leave them up just to, if anyone says, how can I ever start, it'll be rubbish. I just show them back to my first ever stream. Didn't know if I was live. There was echo as well on the sound, and I think there was only about 30 to 40 people watching, which actually wasn't bad back then. But obviously things have changed, quite a bit. If you haven't already followed Mark, I'm sure you have, but if not, FPL General on Twitter. I have links in the description below. Also does 59th Minute podcast as part of The Athletic as well, so make sure to check that out. Basically, we're just going to chat a bit about FPL. It's obviously pre-season when we're doing this, so that's what we're looking at, game week 1 squads and stuff like that. We'll come on to the draft in a minute. Let's kick it off. Let's just do something a bit broader here. FPL's been out, about 4 weeks now. You've had a bit of a time to have a look, bit of a tinker. How are you feeling in general about kind of prices and putting together a squad? Because I think when it first came out, probably myself included, even like looking at Fofana, who's not even in my team now, thought that everyone was a bit cheap. How are you feeling about it now?
Yeah, I think that was my initial reaction as well. I was a bit disappointed by the prices. I think a lot of people were. Not even just that a lot of players were quite cheap. It's just a lot of decisions are already made for us. Things like Salah over Mane, for example, and stuff like that. But like you say, we're probably 4 weeks now since it launched. I think you're starting to see as the season gets a little bit closer, teams on Twitter are starting to change a little bit as people tinker a little bit more. The Sancho transfer has obviously shaken things up in midfield a bit, which is good. Glad he came in at under 10 million because that gives people a decision to make, Bruno versus Sancho. So overall, I think, the closer the season gets, I probably don't mind the prices too much, but I would still like to see a few big Premier League transfers to happen to make us, think about things. Obviously, Kane, for example, I'm favouring 3 cheap strikers. I still think I would probably favour 3 cheap strikers, even if Kane moves to City. But, if it does happen, big decision to be made. So yeah, hopefully a few more things happen before game week 1.
Yeah, I mean, Kane to City would really... I mean, Kane to City would be interesting for a few reasons. One, because obviously it's such a big move. We want a striker at City. We haven't had one. I mean, obviously Aguero only left this season, but he hasn't been the same Aguero for a little while, where he's kind of set and forgetting our teams. But also, like, Haaland to Chelsea would be amazing as well. And with Kane specifically at City, City's opening fixtures are not the best. I know they are the best team, so they can beat anyone, but it would still create a good talking point, so I agree. And if Haaland came, it would just be chaos because we would have to swap big hitters all the time. And I know a lot of people just aren't used to doing that. The whole set and forget would just go out the window, I think. So yeah, I'm quite interested. I think it might even be more chaotic when they happen after game week 1, right? Because then it's much harder to switch. If you've gone 3 cheap strikers and Kane suddenly moves to City, I mean, what do you think you would do if he's not at City game week 1, game week 2 he's at Norwich? What are you doing? Are you hitting him in? Are you wildcarding? I know it's like a lot of what ifs, but what would be your first thought?
I don't think so. I don't think I would go out of my way to get him for Norwich because one simple reason, Pep. I mean, even if he does sign, can we 100% say he's going to go straight into the starting 11 for that, first game if he's only signed, a couple of days before and not had much training? So I think it'd be quite hard to trust him with a captain's armband for that reason. I think we've already got Salah with a very good fixture. I think it's Burnley in game week 2. So I think regardless of when Kane moves, if it does happen, I may not have him for the first 3 or 4 game weeks to begin with, and maybe it will be a case of early wildcard. I think a lot of people will early wildcard this season the way things are shaping up anyway. So, I'm going into the season with an open mind on the wildcard. Last couple of seasons I played it quite late, but I think there's a good chance I could play it earlier this season.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I think it's inevitable it'll have to be used early. Just because I think, if I'm not wrong, which I might be, I think the transfer window was closed before game week 1 last year, and this year it's not. Am I wrong there? Do you know?
Yeah, I think that rings a bell with me. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's obviously going to provide a bit more, hopefully, chaos, some last-minute signings. We'll see what happens. You tweeted recently, interesting tweet, how you're not setting yourself a target. So probably a bit like me over the years, because you started so long ago. The top 10K was always the target, right? And obviously, as we've been playing, the millions and millions more people are playing FPL. It gets probably harder to reach that every single year. And you said you weren't going to set yourself a target. Your aim, although you did kind of, because you said your aim's to win FPL, but I guess that's everyone's target every year, right? What do you think you're going to change to do that, or what's your like kind of approach different to previous seasons?
Yeah, I think while I was reflecting this summer on last season, I think I was guilty, probably more so than ever, of putting too much pressure on myself to do well, and that's the reason for it. I mean, I think us content creators, we feel like there's extra pressure on us to do well because we're earning a living from it, and there's respectability that goes with good ranks and whatsoever. But I just think looking back over the years, who was this person who came up with you have to finish top 10K, or that's what should be the target, especially when more and more people play the game every season. So the goalposts should really be changing in terms of our targets every season anyway. So the main reason for I'm going to try and forget about top 10K this season. The reason is I want to enjoy the game more. I felt for the first time ever last season, maybe with 2 months to go, I kind of fell in love with FPL. And part of it, I think, was because I was doing so well. I was, ranked about top 1K during the first half of the season. And then when I started to slide down to 20K, 30K, 40K, it affected me negatively more than it should have. And it's, it stopped me from enjoying the game. So I think if I go into it this season more, my goal usually would be number one, top 10K. But my goal this season is number one, just enjoy the game, and rank is secondary. I don't, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter whether you finish 7K or 777K. I've seen that even as a content creator a couple of seasons ago. I had a shocker. I think it was over 500K I finished. And I mean, it didn't affect business too much. The content is good. The advice is good. Things just didn't go well for me, or, I wasn't taking my own advice. So yeah, I just want to enjoy the game. And I just think, I the way I look at it, I'm 30 years old. One of my patrons is, I think, 78, and he's still playing very seriously. I think he finished top 10K a couple of times in the last couple of seasons. So that gives me about 40 years to win FPL. So that's the way I'm looking at it. So my new target is to win FPL at some point, or not even win it, but be in the running with maybe 4 or 5 weeks to go. Be top 50 and have a real chance. Because I mean, that's the pinnacle. That's why we're all playing. We'd all love to win it at some point, and then maybe I'll just retire when that happens. So yeah, it's all about enjoyment for me this season, and just taking away that top 10K thing that puts extra pressure on us, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, you're right, as a content creator, you always hear about your rank. I always get it at the start of the season in the comment section. It'd be like, what was your rank last year? And obviously this season it's really easy. I can say, well, it was nearly top 1K. It was really good. Last season I was like, well, it was 166K, but this happened, that happened. And yeah, I try and not worry about it too much, but I find it difficult, to be honest, to not worry about hitting that high rank. I actually, you probably follow him too. I think it's FPL Reuser. Supposedly, I don't know how he does this, but doesn't check the rank before Game Week 38, which would be, if you could do that, I think it would probably be really helpful in your decision making. I just wouldn't be able to do that because of the nature of the business. But on you talking about when you were top 1K and started sliding, I must admit, I was quite a high rank for most of last season. I think I was in the top 40K by like Game Week 20, maybe even earlier than that. Yeah, because of Game Week 18 wildcard, so it must have been earlier. And I must admit, it wasn't like as exciting as I probably thought it was being that high. It was almost like I want to get the next game week over and just not get that big red arrow. That's all I was thinking every single week. It wasn't going on to win it or whatever. I mean, I don't really know how I could have changed my approach to do that. But every week, rather than like, right, this is exciting, let's see if I can get a high rank, it was just, I just don't want that big red arrow. I just want to stay where I am, and just, it was almost like get the season over with. So in some ways, I actually quite like starting badly and having to chase. I just think there's a bit more.
I'm exactly the same. I think it's a lot more fun chasing. You probably got to be a little bit more different than you usually would, because if you're really high in the rankings, you almost start to just protect yourself, and that takes the fun out of it, because you might have option A, who's a really fun pick that you really like, but then you've got option B, who's very highly owned and can really hurt you. So yeah, and I always think the ideal season is you finish at your highest rank in Game Week 38. So it's a to climb right the way through. And, I think that's happened to me quite a few times in the past, maybe not recently, but they're probably my most enjoyable seasons, when you do start to get that momentum in the second half of the season, and your best rank is game week 38 when it's all over.
Yeah, my first year doing content, I think I was like 300k by Christmas or something, and I started making videos, so it was like the worst time to do it, and I think I ended at 5k. Like, I just had such a leap in the second half of the season. It was, it was great. But I didn't want to say last year how it's just I'm waiting for the end of the season, because people were like, yeah, that's just an excuse in case you fall down the ranks. So now I've actually hit that 1k. Can come out and say I don't know. The chase is just better. We'll see what happens.
More fun.
I won't be saying that when I'm a million at Christmas this year, but we'll see. We'll see how I take it. One thing I wanted to talk to you about was actually something you mentioned on the Planet FPL pod, which, just in case anyone hasn't seen it, I thought it might be interesting to talk about here. How you watch a lot of football, but you don't necessarily watch it live. So you'll tape the game. That sounds so old, doesn't it? But everyone knows what you mean. You tape the game.
On my VCR.
Get your VCR out. And then watch it later. And that could be for any reason, right? You might be out for the weekend or whatever. But you said it takes the emotion out of it. And I know when I watch a game, and I said this to James when he came on, if I've got a player in that game that hasn't scored yet, I'm constantly watching that player. Right, is that player making a run into the box? Are they getting enough passes? Are they making enough passes? And I wouldn't say it spoils the enjoyment of the game, but it probably makes me not realise everything else that's going on. So you like to already know the result, essentially, right?
Yeah. So what I found is and I know not everyone would be the same as me, but I almost enjoy the games more watching them afterwards, because I feel like I'm really sitting down. I've got my pen and paper to make notes. I'm really analysing the game rather than being really emotionally invested. Take, for example, game week 1 this season, Liverpool play Norwich. I'm probably going to have Captain Salah, going to have Trent, might even have Robertson as well. And if I sit down and watch that game on the Saturday or whatever day it's on, which players am I going to have my eyes on for most of the game? It's going to be those 3 guys. But if I'm out, the main reason I watch games Mondays and Tuesdays is because, my wife's a teacher. We both work hard Monday to Friday. I try and switch off then. Saturday and Sunday we'll get out and about and do stuff. So I don't want to be sitting all day on a Saturday watching games when I've been looking at fantasy all week anyway. So I like to break from it at the weekend. But if I don't watch the Norwich Liverpool game, I'll check. I'll watch Match of the Day that night. I'll know Salah has a brace. I'll know Trent has 3 assists. Then I'll watch the game on Monday. I already know my players have got me the points, so I find I'll spend less time watching those 3 guys, and I'll be focused on all 22 players then, rather than just those 3 guys. So, I find, I always do a little eye test podcast for patrons after I watch a game. So when I'm sitting down on that Monday, Tuesday to analyse it, I'm really picking out, specific things about specific players. I'm trying to find things that people won't, catch in the highlights or catch in the numbers. So, we're just watching little details like the corners and stuff. So, I mean, if let's say you've got Van Dijk and Trent and you're watching a Liverpool corner, what are you going to watch? You're going to watch Trent taking it. You're going to watch what Van Dijk's doing.
Yeah.
But if you already know Van Dijk didn't score in the game, you'll have a more open picture. And I think that, there's probably flaws in the eye test if you watch it live, because you're too emotionally invested. But you've also got the distractions as well of Twitter and stuff like that. So when I watch a game on a Monday or Tuesday, there's no phone. So it's, 90 minutes, eyes on the television. Whereas if you watch a game live, your eyes won't be on the television for 90 minutes. So that's kind of just a couple of reasons why I do it. And I enjoy it. I think it's a roller coaster when you watch a game live, and you quite often at the end of a game, you can be very pissed off. But if you already know what's happened, you won't be pissed off after you watch it after the fact.
Yeah, I fully understand why you would do that. I just don't know if I can do it. And this isn't even like an FPL thing. I've always found it difficult to watch a game once I know the score. But I do agree that it would probably be better for my overall kind of analysis of the game, I suppose, if I already know the result, because I would just be looking at different things. I'm not worried about where the goal's coming from, because I know it's already coming, essentially. Do you think you'd watch as much football if you weren't playing FPL?
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. I think, I heard Az and a few people talking about that this week as well. If I wasn't playing FPL, even as a Manchester United fan, I think it would probably be just Manchester United games, and it probably wouldn't even be every weekend. I think it would very much just probably become match of the day for me on a Saturday night, and that would probably be it.
Yeah, I've thought about this. I don't know the answer. I wouldn't watch. I certainly wouldn't watch as broad a spectrum of games in the Premier League. Like, Do you know what I mean? Like Sheffield United versus West Brom, whatever we've watched in the past, because we've got a defender there for a clean sheet. I automatically would just not watch them, I think. But yeah, I don't know if I'd be the same, because FPL is kind of like so merged now into football for me. It's hard to know what it is hard to know what life will be like without FPL these days, to be completely honest.
Be a bit scared to think about that.
I am a bit scared to think about it, because at the end of the day, like, it's been, obviously now it's like it's much more of a job now, but it's also been such a hobby, and like there's nothing wrong with a good hobby. Everyone's got a different, you know, viewpoint on life and what they want to do, and I don't know, it just is whether or not it's ever become too much for people. I do wonder, like, what I would do if I didn't have it. What would be... I would just find another hobby. Like, before I did FPL, I played a lot of video games, so I've kind of just swapped one for the other, essentially. But now I'm, like, you know, getting closer and closer to 40. I'm still a bit off 40, by the way, before anyone says anything. But, yeah, I just don't know what I would switch my next hobby to. But I think you said you've got quite an addictive personality. I kind of do too. Like, if I start playing a video game, for example, then I will go and watch every YouTube video I can find about that thing. How can I get better at it? How can I not cheat, but like, what are the tips and stuff that will help me get better? Which is basically what happened with FPL. When I first got into a league with FPL, boom, straight on Google, FPL tips. How can I get better at FPL and stuff like that? So yeah, but I don't know how much football I watch. I'd still definitely watch football, but those not meaningless games, but let's say the ones you can bank on being a bit more boring than the rest, I'd probably probably.
Yeah, I think I would. I think I would go back to Coronation Street and EastEnders on a Monday night instead of Burnley Newcastle.
The sad thing is, I probably know what's happening in those as well, because they just always. I even know what's happening on Love Island at the moment. I don't watch that, but it's always on in the house. Yeah, what's happening in EastEnders right now?
I know too much about Love Island as well, without wanting to know too much.
We're not going to get onto a Love Island discussion, but sometimes I stream. And I'll get people in the chat, why are you streaming at the same time as Love Island? I just think, get out. We're not talking about Love Island here. But yeah, Toby and whoever it is, Chloe and yeah. Anyway, we'll move.
They're not together anymore, mate.
No, I know. One episode left. But yeah, we'll get past Love Island. Before we get onto the draft, one more thing. You talk a lot. I probably have a little bit as well. It's something that's always said in FPL, right, which is breaking through the noise, right? So there's hundreds, not hundreds, but you know, when you put article writers, podcasters, video, you know, YouTubers, etc. together, there probably are hundreds and hundreds of content creators these days. There's loads of discussion for people that don't even create content. They still want to discuss the game, etc. on Twitter. And you talk about breaking through the noise. What does that mean to you? Because essentially, like, we want people to listen to us, right? So when they listen to us, what do we not want them to hear, or what do we not want them to do? You know, once they've listened to me, you, or, you know, the hundreds of other people out there.
Yeah, I think I know I used to consume way too much FPL content. You know, I would read almost everything. I would listen to a podcast in the morning. I would want another one in the afternoon, give me another one in the evening. It was just almost an addiction in itself, listening to FPL podcasts, because there's so many good ones out there. And, you know, you pick up little things from the different ones. And for me, it's become more about now picking and choosing what you like and you know, not overdoing it. Maybe, you know, one podcast a day or 3 podcasts a week or something like that. But yeah, I think when people who, you know, might listen to me on a Tuesday, they might watch your video on a Wednesday, you know, you've got to be very careful not to be influenced too much by what people like me and you are saying. And I know me and you probably have the same issue each season, where we'll get certain people who follow us just copy our every move, which is quite frustrating. And again, you know, first of all, why are you playing if you're just going to copy someone else? But it's always going to be an issue. But yeah, it's all about trying to, what I always say to people at the start of a week, before you listen to any podcasts or YouTube, or before you read anything, you know, have a think about what you think you might do yourself this week. Note it down on a piece of paper or somewhere, just so you can go back to it on Friday. Because once you listen to loads of stuff, read loads of stuff midweek, it's going to change your thinking. It's always good, I think, to have that reference point to go back to what your initial thought was. That was a tip I picked up actually from Tom on Who Got the Assist a couple of seasons back. And it's something I've just got in the habit of doing every week, just a little post-it note on the laptop or in the office, pick it up on a Friday, just to refer back to how you were thinking, and ask yourself, why has your thinking changed? And, you know, should you go with the initial one, or is there better new information that's justifying a change?
Yeah, that's what I basically similar. Because obviously I get a lot of noise, just like you do, I'm sure, from everyone like telling me that the team's wrong, or I should get this player instead. And I like listening to it, to be honest. But I just think you're looking essentially for that bit of info you haven't considered. So you've got you want this player, and then you listen to a podcast or whatever it might be, and they give you a significant bit of info which maybe you've overlooked. Maybe you've overlooked the fixtures or whatever it might be, a change in strategy, tactic, formation from a manager. That's the kind of thing that I'm really looking for. If someone just says, I don't rate Bruno Fernandes, it should be Salah instead. Well, that's just an opinion at the end of the day, and that's fine. That's what we're here for. But that shouldn't change your mind unless there's like a significant bit of info, essentially.
Yeah, I think the most important thing with that kind of stuff is, and it's very hard to be open-minded, but you have to be. You can't, Sunday night I'm getting Kane this week, Monday I'm getting Kane this week, Tuesday I'm getting Kane this week. If you hear something, a really strong argument for Jamie Vardy on a Wednesday, be open, listen to it. Don't have tunnel vision just because you decided on Sunday that you're getting Kane this week. It might be the wrong choice. So always be open-minded and open to other ideas.
Absolutely. And talking of tunnel vision, I definitely get tunnel vision when I make drafts. So I've got you to put yours together now. So you got the old 3-4-3. Obviously, a few players in here we're seeing a lot of drafts: Fernandez, Salah, Trent, etc. At this stage, so we're about 2.5 weeks out from the season. How worried are you, or how much are you thinking about the little details? So, for example, for me, when I first start making a team, I will put in a bunch of players and I'll just have 4.5 million defenders in, but 5-6 weeks out, I don't care who they are, right? I'm not worried about the little details about which player it is. I just want to figure out the price points and then decide which players to get. Like, how much are you looking at the little things yet, or are you still looking at a bigger overall picture about how you want to set up and stuff like that?
Yes, for me, it's still very much bigger picture until probably 10 days before, maybe even just a week before. It's all about, anytime I spend thinking about FPL now is more overall strategy. How do I want to play the game this season? I'm thinking things like, I want to try and aim for possibly about 40 transfers, maybe take the hits down a bit from last season, maybe minus 20 over the season, little things like that. And it's more of kind of thinking in the back of my head, which players do I really want to own without really having tinkered too much. And like you'll see there, Luke Ayling and Lewis Dunk are in there, but they're there more for their price than who they are at the moment. Come game week 1, that's probably going to be a 4.5 and a 5, or else 2 4.5s. But at the moment, Ayling and Dunk aren't any more likely than anyone else to be there once game week 1 comes around. It's more about kind of what do I think works well structure-wise for game week 1. I'm quite keen on Trent and Robertson double up, and I'm quite keen on the 3 cheaper forwards as well, and avoiding the likes of Vardy and Kane. So yeah, it's very much, Salah and Bruno, I think for me, pick themselves. Bruno, not 100%, but probably 80-90%. And yeah, I've probably made about 2 drafts. I've spent very little time on the website, and I won't tinker too much until about a week before.
Yeah, sounds good. On Bruno Fernandes, I've actually put a video together today, which isn't out yet, but it will be out by the time this video goes out, about whether he's essential or not. I've kind of come to, a lot of people will just say that he is. I've kind of come to the conclusion that you could get away without him, but I don't know if there's enough. I feel like most of the other premium players have all got like a slight issue, or at least an issue that I can come up with. Like Kane, we've seen issues apparently with his fitness. Will he be at Spurs? Will he be at Man City? When will he be available? You've got players like Mane, but then you've already got Salah, and like you said right earlier at the start, I fully agree. Like the price for Mane was just, I don't know. I just feel like with some prices, I know why they price them so high, because if Mane starts smashing it, then he'll be worth 12 million. If he can do what we know he can do, he'll be worth 12. But at the start of the season, it just creates like a non-discussion, basically. So I feel like Fernandes kind of fits in there. On the 3 Liverpool, are you kind of, the fixtures are so good, I have to have 3? Would you be open to Jota instead, or do you think it has to be Trent and Robertson?
I'm very much leaning towards Robertson. So Trent and Salah, they're not going anywhere. They're probably the only 2 players that I know I'm going to have, unless there's an injury. Robertson versus Jota. I want to have 3 Liverpool fixtures, number 1, but also because, they're one of the best teams in the league, and I try as much as possible to have as many players from the best teams in the league. Now, Man City and Chelsea are a bit of an exception because rotation is a bit of a nightmare, but Robertson, Trent, Salah, how many minutes are they going to get over 38 game weeks? They're going to get almost all of them. And I always try and, just quite simplify FPL, get the guys that are going to play 90 minutes almost every week. I can't say that about Jota. And I'm going to try and, like I always do, try and set up so that I have to make as few transfers as possible. And I just think if I go Robertson over Jota, I'm less likely to want to make a transfer on that third Liverpool position. I think there's a good chance if I go Robertson game week 1, if Liverpool are defending well this season, which I expect them to with Van Dijk back, there's a very good chance Trent Robertson will just stay in my team long term, even if in those early weeks the clean sheets are not coming. I'll probably want to give them a bit more time than others. So yeah, very much set on that triple up from Liverpool.
Yeah, no, it's hard to argue against that, to be honest. With Rafinha, I love him as well. I think he's been underpriced by a million. I've said this a few times before. I think even at 7.5, I consider him. Are you worried at all about the fact that they play Man United and Liverpool in the first 4? Like, they don't have the greatest opening 4 fixtures. Are you worried about that at all, or do you think he's just too good to resist?
I'm not set on Rafinha for those reasons. Fixtures mainly. I don't think he's an essential pick in week 1. But like you, I think he's underpriced. But I also think, for example, I think Harrison at 6 million is a really good price as well. I think a lot of people are going to go Buendia instead of Rafinha. I've got both of them there. But I think there's a strong case going Buendia or over Rafinha because Aston Villa's opening 3 fixtures are so good. Then you can make the switch. So, yeah, very impressed by Leeds last season. I've got 2 of them in this draft. But when I take a closer look at fixtures, the closer game week 1 gets, maybe I won't have 2 Leeds players and Rafinha might hold off maybe for the first 3 or 4 game weeks and then come back to him.
Good stuff. When people look at this draft, I know what they're going to say. They're going to say it looks like a lot of other drafts. It's template, etc. It's a word that constantly gets used throughout a whole FPL season. My question is, do you care about that? Does that bother you at all? Like, do you look at this team and think it's not different enough?
I actually muted the word template on Twitter, which cleans up the timeline very, very nicely. I can imagine. Along with a few other words. But yeah, it doesn't bother me in the slightest because I always say the only template I worry about is the template I'm building for myself in game week 1. I don't care what other people are doing. I'm not going to go change my team just because I see lots of other similar teams. And Luke Disable summed it up very well in a tweet. We've all got the same players for a reason. We all have the same prices. We all have the same fixtures. We all have the same, memories of players from the last couple of seasons and what they've done. So, things will change once the games kick off. Game week 2, 3, 4, teams will start to change. And there's always differences. Captaincy, for example, people will be captaining different players. So yeah, template. This talk of template just goes straight over my head.
Good stuff. I actually there's a few words that I try and not use, but they're just so hard, like form, template, punt, risk. I try and not use them too much, and if I do, I usually caveat them these days with this isn't quite what I mean, because when we hear punt, it's they're all words essentially that are used in a negative way. Like punt, i.e., he's probably not going to score too many points, but not all players that are considered punts, I would say, are punts, right? Like, I mean, you've got Tony and Buendia. I did 100. I asked a 100 FPL manager video about tips, and the majority, not the majority, but the largest majority was about not going for promoted players, right? Because they're punts generally. But you've got Buendia and Tony. I mean, do you worry about that at all?
Yeah, I don't really want to pick Tony because it goes, one of my rules is kind of avoid the promoted teams until I run the rule over them myself in terms of an eye test. But the reason he keeps going into the drafts is because of his price. There's very little else at 6.5. And he's kind of like the final piece of a jigsaw when there's only really 1 or 2 pieces left. It's either him or Pookie, really, who goes in there, unless you want to go down the route of a Welbeck or something like that. So yeah, I feel like Tony is a punt. I think Buendia is a punt as well. And I don't think I'll have both. I think it'll be one or the other, and it'll be replaced probably by someone who's a bit more reliable.
6.5 million up front, more pay. Can't interest you in him at all, no?
I think that's another word I might have muted on Twitter, actually.
I love that.
I remember I had him a couple of times, maybe 2 seasons back. What a bloody nightmare.
He's not on penalties either anymore, so he's gone down even more. Well, I think it's gross now on penalties for Brighton if he's on the pitch. So yeah, more pay unfortunately is no good. That 6.5 million bracket up front, it kind of does get picked itself. Like I've seen a few people say about Benteke, and I don't think it's the craziest shout, but Crystal Palace fixtures are also pretty poor to start off. Like Chelsea, Liverpool, Spurs in the first 5. Welbeck, Rodrigo, will he get minutes? Like you're right. Sometimes these positions just pick themselves. The only other option is to go 3-5-2 or 4 at the back. Like is that a consideration at all?
Yeah. I'm not locked into a 3-4-3. I'll build a couple of drafts. That final week of 3-5-2s, maybe four. I quite like four at the back. 4-4-2 or 4-3-3. But what I actually probably like more is somehow finding cash and upgrading Tony, maybe a Callum Wilson. Had my troubles with him in the past, but love him as a player. Good fixtures to begin with, and I just with Wilson, it's much easier to go from Wilson down to a Tony or a Pookie after a couple of weeks than it is to go from a Tony up to a Callum Wilson or a Calvert-Lewin. So, maybe I'll end up with 7.5 million strikers, and I think it just makes things a little bit more flexible in your front line then after a couple of game weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many options around that price. Even if you didn't want to downgrade, there's loads of side grades you can go for as well. Like if we see Inacho's playing a lot of minutes or whatever it might be. Last one, really quickly, Sancho. What are you feeling? What's your first gut instinct with him?
First gut instinct is I've got very little interest, and I think it comes down to kind of the FPL manager I am, and possibly being a Manchester United fan might be playing into it as well. That I don't know, I'm probably more of a pessimist than an optimist when it comes to Man United. But again, it doesn't matter that I'm a Man United fan. It's just that whole thing of a new player to the league. I know he's English and he's been in England before, but I just don't mind just waiting, give him a couple of weeks, see how he looks. I just think when you've got Bruno on penalties, points machine, reliable captain, I really can't see myself going with Sancho game week 1. I'll give him a couple of weeks, and if he looks like he's going to be better value than Bruno, or the double up looks good, then yeah, I'm all for it. But he won't be in my game week 1 team.
Fair enough. There you go. You've heard it here first. No Sancho. We'll see what happens for game week 1. There's still a few weeks now. I can probably convince you, I reckon. But I agree. I think For me, it's probably not one or the other. It's probably both, or just Fernandez really. But yeah, he is difficult.
Don't even try and kid yourself, Andy. Everybody knows you're going to have Sancho game week 1.
He is in my current draft. I'm releasing the video about that on Thursday, and he is in my my draft. But I'm already thinking like Mahrez, for example. If he looks like he's going to start the season, he's 0.5 cheaper. It's only 0.5 more to get Son as well. So he's in a really good price point. I think 9.5. I know a lot of people think it's overpriced. I think it's perfect, really.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, he's going to be absolutely nailed on, which is such a big thing. Like we can talk about how good Man City players are, but ultimately you've always got that doubt in your mind about whether they're going to start the next game. And you are paying, like with Foden, for example, he's only 8 million, but when's he going to play? With Sancho, you just don't have that. So, yeah, he's currently in. We'll see if he makes it all the way to game week 1. If you want to follow the General's team, obviously go and give them a follow on Twitter, FPL General. Like I said, there is the 59th minute podcast. Well, nice and short too. It's not like an hour plus long. It's usually around 30 minutes, right?
Yeah, it should be about 59 minutes long, but it's not. Yeah. I usually aim for about 30 minutes during the season. Nice and easy to consume.
Yeah, there you go. I'll put all the links in the description below. Mark, thank you very much for joining me.
Cheers, Andy. Hope you smash it again, and best of luck with the continued growth of the channel.
Thank you very much. So yeah, if you enjoyed that, go and give Mark a follow. Links in the description below. Give it a like as well. Hit that subscribe button. I will be back tomorrow with another video. Otherwise, thanks for watching.